Maine Mariners, and Travis's dad, Lee, was part of the arena crew. In fact, when I would host Scoro, I would race down to the Zamboni entrance, and Lee would be driving the car that would come out onto the ice and do a big donut and drop me at the carpet to host Scoro. And Travis was this little tow-headed 5-year-old kid who everybody just sort of adopted in the organization. He was always around, picking up, little rolls of tape from the locker room floor to take home with him and helping with sticks. Tom McVie called me last night. He said, "Remember the time Mike Milbury had the temper tantrum and he threw all the sticks onto the ice?" He said it was poor Travis who was out there all by himself trying to pick them all up off the ice. So I knew Travis from a very young age, and I have been friends with Travis and Lee and Brenda the whole time.
And obviously that 5-year-old kid turned into a pretty dang good hockey player. And what was that kind of like? Obviously, you're in the hockey business, covering Hockey East, the Bruins. And what was it like to see a kid that you knew from such a young age rise through the ranks and be such a top-notch elite player coming out of the state of Maine?
The year that Travis was being recruited by Boston University, I was doing BU hockey on TV with Mike Eruzione, and we were at the arena. And Travis and Lee came through because it was Travis's recruiting trip. I had an opportunity to talk to both of them for a little while. I told, mainly Travis, but Lee was sitting there as well. And I said, "Listen, if you've got the opportunity to play at Boston University and to play for a guy like Jackie Parker, you've got to grab at it. You've got to take advantage of it." And I know he was being recruited other places, but and I love Jerry York at Boston College and other coaches, but I've got a real close relationship with Jackie Parker. So I kind of helped talk Travis into going to BU, which, later on, the way things turned out, I had some difficult feelings about.
Yeah, and if you don't mind talking about that game and what was kind of racing through your head, seeing somebody you knew for such a long time, obviously go through what happened.
Yeah, by the time Travis was making his debut for Boston University, I wasn't doing the games at that point. It was a Friday night game. I didn't watch it. I didn't know what had happened. I got up Saturday morning, walked to the end of my driveway to pick up the newspaper. Look it up, kids. We used to do that sort of thing. Got my Boston Herald out of the newspaper box, and the entire front page of the Herald was a headshot of Travis. And my heart sank. I learned very quickly what happened. Ultimately ended up going into the hospital. Jackie was there, and Lee and Brenda, obviously, and it was fairly obvious pretty early on that this was not going to be something that they were going to be able to fix, and that Travis was probably never going to walk again, barring advances in medical science, which he helped try to fund for all these years. But we knew pretty early on what it was going to be like, and it was devastating for all of us when it happened.
And somebody who is in that situation, there's a few roads you can take with your life. And Travis obviously went quite literally the high road in trying to raise awareness and, like you said, raise money for advancements. And what was that like for you to see, an 18-year-old kid at the time make such a mature decision?
It was amazing. I heard Travis say once that he spent the first 20 years of his life with passion. He spent the last 20 years of his life with purpose. And it became a purpose for him. When the accident first happened, I was involved in putting together a radiothon to try to raise some money to help Travis, to help, get him on the road to all of the things that he was going to need. And we raised $1 million, which, back in those days was still a lot of money. And but he took it and he decided he was going to build on it. And the Travis Roy Foundation raised literally millions of dollars throughout the course of the years. He made grants and gave money to people who needed it. He visited people who had suffered similar injuries. Dena Lang, who was the terrific hockey player for the Boston Pride, she suffered a similar fate in a hockey accident at Gillette Stadium during the Winter Classic. And Travis was at the hospital visiting with Dena and lending expertise and encouragement and trying to help talk her through it. And I've been friends with Dena for a long time as well. And she will tell you, and long before what happened yesterday happened, she would tell you, Travis was essential in helping her learn what was possible and being positive. He did that for a lot of people, not just Dena and countless others, and he raised money for countless others as well.
That's funny you brought that up, because I spoke with TC this morning, and he kind of brought up the fact that Travis was always in the hospital. If a hockey player or anyone else
Yep.
suffered a similar fate, and the hockey community, you know it well here in New England. And yesterday, the outpouring of support, what was that like? I mean, if you just search Travis Roy on Twitter, you can scroll for hours and see all the tweets about it.
Yeah, when I first got word, I actually got a text from a friend up in Maine who told me, and it had not been made public yet. When I confirmed it, I reached out to Jackie Parker right away and texted back and forth with him a little bit. And as I was sitting down at the dinner table, my phone rang, and it was Tom McVie, who was the coach of the Mariners back in those days. His nickname for Travis was Clifford, and because he just looked like Clifford to Tommy. And he says, "D, did you hear about Clifford?" And he just wanted to talk and tell stories. And he told me this one story. He said, we're in the weight room one day before a game, and the team's stretching. And Travis, who was just a little kid, but was the only little kid who would be allowed to do this, was sitting on an exercise bike while the team is stretching. And Travis says to Tom McVie, says, "Coach, who's starting in goal tonight?" And the room got really quiet because, you don't ask the coach that thing. And Tommy said, "Sammy's starting tonight, Sammy St. Laurent." And the room got kind of quiet again. And Travis says, "Well, Coach, remember Sean McKenzie's a really good goalie too." And the room got even quieter. And McVie started laughing when he's telling me the story last night. And he said, "D, he's the only person who could have said that to me at that time, and I wasn't going to blow up." But that's the kind of person Travis was. He wanted to make sure that Tom McVie didn't forget that he had two goalies on this team, and the other goalie was really good too. And he's sitting on his exercise bike as the team is stretching and giving a lecture to Tom McVie.
And it's the hours since, here at Maine, there's obviously been a lot of community support, and just from the local level that you obviously witnessed in the Maine Mariners locker room, and then more of a regional and national, even global scale. I know TC said that Travis Roy will go down as probably the most influential college hockey player of all time. And do you mind just speaking about the lasting impact he will have on the hockey and really just the community?
Yeah, and TC's probably right about that. When you think about what an 11-second college career led to, and that was literally the length of his entire college career, but the good that he was able to do and the things he was able to accomplish. There was a story, Travis was in the hospital not long after the accident happened, and the LA Kings came to town to play against the Bruins, and Pat Conacher, who was a Maine Mariner at one time, was on the LA Kings. And after the morning skate or after practice, they were in town for a couple of days. Pat Conacher, they're saying, "Hey, Patty, let's go get lunch." He said, "No, I'm going to go visit somebody in the hospital." And Wayne Gretzky says, "Well, who are you going to go visit?" And Patty told him about Travis. And Wayne said, "Well, I want to go." And Mark Messier says, "Well, or whoever it wasn't Messier there, whoever it was." And all of a sudden, this whole passel of LA Kings end up at the hospital visiting with Travis Roy. They're getting ready to leave. The visit is over. And Wayne says to Pat Conacher, he says, just give me a minute, okay? I'll be right out. And he went back into the hospital room, and he wrote a gigantic check to the Travis Roy Foundation, what was the beginnings of the Travis Roy Foundation. And he said, basically, I want to help too. I want to do what you're doing. And hockey players from all across the spectrum, high school, college, minor leagues, NHL, all were drawn to him. They were drawn to his story. They were drawn to his personality. They were drawn to his positiveness. And even guys who didn't know him, like Wayne Gretzky, wanted to help him. Of course, here in Boston, Travis was associated with the Bruins for years and years. They wanted to honor him a few years ago, and he dropped the ceremonial first puck. It was a Bruins game against Tampa Bay, and it was Stamkos and Chara doing the puck drop. And the Bruins wanted to give Travis a Bruins sweater. Well, his number at BU was number 24. But Travis said, "Well, I can't have a number 24 Bruins sweater. That number's retired for Terry O'Reilly. I can't wear that." They made a quick call to Terry O'Reilly, who said basically along the lines of, "What, are you kidding me? I'd be honored if he would wear it." but Travis didn't want to wear it because it wasn't right. It was retired. It was retired for Terry O'Reilly. Terry, needless to say, gave his permission. When Travis went out on the ice in his chair that night to drop the puck, he was wearing his Bruins sweater with the number 24 on the back.
And those are just some incredible stories. And the last thing for you, Dale, is there anything else, you would like to add about Travis and the legacy he is leaving behind?
Yeah, it was a gut punch when I got the news last night. And it was a rough night around here, I'm not going to lie to you. But then as I thought about it, as the night went on, my mind went not as much to Travis as it went to Lee and Brenda. The incredible love and the incredible parenting that they offered to Travis, the unwavering support for all those years. Travis was worried about being a burden on his parents. They never thought he was a burden. They loved him unconditionally and unwaveringly. I think of Lee and I think of Brenda, and I think about, how they're doing. I haven't had an opportunity to reach out to them yet. I really do want to talk to them as well. But you think about how they raised their son. That's the reason Travis is the man that he became, because of the way he was raised, the Maine roots, the Maine stock. That's who he was. And I think of people from Maine. I think of, the salt of the earth. I think of Leroy. I think of Brenda Roy. I think of Travis Roy. And I'm a little sadder today that one of those isn't with us anymore.